Namaste, Guru Kalam, and all mentors, Kota Harinarayana, mentor for the Inspired Indian Foundation, Dr. Tessie Ma'am, Dr. Vadhyaya, and all award winners, and all the volunteers and supporters of Inspired India Foundation. My greetings to you on this occasion of this 5th annual, last year it couldn't be held, Guru Kalam Memorial Lecture. And I'm really fortunate to be present here to deliver that talk. Before we begin, I think it is our duty to thank, or rather speak a good few points about Inspired India Foundation. Dr. Kota has already mentioned about their contribution. And it is really amazing to see how inspired people, inspired by Guru Kalam, can do wonders in silently doing the transformation which is required. And hats off to you. Let me congratulate each one of you for your wonderful contribution in changing whatever you can do, a little bit of things here and there. I think that really matters. So thanks once again to all of you for that wonderful work you do. So today, for the 5th Guru Kalam Memorial Lecture, I was wondering what I should speak. Especially, I was asking another question, who are going to be listening to me? Youngsters, maybe they may be here and they may listen to through the podcast or whatever webcast that you will be doing now. So I thought I should speak about what is the excitement that I have today to speak about. I come from space technology domain, and I have been building rockets, some space activities, so I should connect these two. Because I happen to see the type of excitement in youngsters. So my talk will be linking these two things, the space and the youngsters. All of you know that when you get out of your room, look at the sky in the evening, the night sky, what you see? A beautifully painted, on a non-cloudy day, of course. The stars are twinkling and you are able to watch the universe beyond your Earth. And as you know, the outer space starts at 100 kilometers above Earth. You know the Kármán line? There is something called, no, there is no line there, but we define there is a Kármán line beyond which we call it is outer space. And at the outer space that you are able to see those millions of stars. And as youngsters, you always wondered, what is all this? The Earth, the Moon, the Sun, the solar system, the Milky Way galaxy, and the galaxies beyond that, and the millions of stars that are there. And you really don't know, are they really there? I think these questions we have been asking. And we know today that none of these stars which you see, they are not there at all. I think it is a picture that is painted in front of you, a historical picture. You know, the star which is the closest star to you is 4 light years away. That means the light from its travel through the last 4 years and just reaching your eyes and dying. So none of the stars which are twinkling there are there. They were there years before. Some of them were there 4 years back. Some of them were hundreds of years back. And that's what you are seeing. So it is simply a historical image that is projected in front of you. It's really amazing, isn't it? When you look at the sky, it's just amazing. So it is this excitement and amazement that really makes people to look at the sky and create those astronomical findings and scientists that came about observing the universe. And it's a wonderful thing, the history of how the universe came about, the Big Bang theory and how it all evolved and the current state of affairs and how it is going to evolve further for the millions of years that is to follow. But one good thing has happened. The human beings with the capability to think about it. And we are the only creature on the surface of this earth who has an ability to look at and then wonder about all this. No other creature. I had never wondered. A dog has an ability to look at the stars and wonder, what's all this? Fortunately, human beings have this capability to look beyond earth and then wonder. I think this is a wonderful capability. And because of this capability, we have been working in space technology. And what exactly is space technology giving us? It gives us the ability to travel beyond the gravity field of Earth using rockets, of course. Then take to orbits of Earth, then place some instruments there. One of the very important instruments that we place there, We means the humanity placed is Hubble Space Telescope. Then came the Kepler Space Telescope, Chandra Observatory, and Indian Astrosat also. So all these satellites sitting in the orbit of Earth, they were looking deeper into the universe. And they tried to collect all the historical light that was coming. Some of the lights that was coming to these telescopes were billions of years old. And these lights were collected, analyzed, and we know about the universe much deeper, much greater detail than humanity ever knew today. So last 30 years, maybe the history of these observation platforms enabled us to see the universe in a different perspective. Today we know how it all came about. You know, Earth contains elements. Many of you young people, you know periodic table. Hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen. You know the periodic table. And the periodic table contains so many elements. And you are constructed of all these elements. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, iron, zinc. Now your body contains all this. Have you ever wondered where from all these elements came? Who created all these elements? You know, sun is only hydrogen burning and helium is produced and atomic reaction is taking place. From that, energy is coming out. The essential starting element of any process is only hydrogen. But then how iron is created? How carbon is created? Today we know how all this is actually created. It is through the explosion of stars. Supernova explosions can only create the elements beyond, say, oxygen. So if you contains iron, it means that iron in each one of you came from the explosion of a star. So all you people are children of supernova explosion. So hundreds of stars exploded billions of years back, and its dust got spread into the universe, and the dust got collected, and it became planets like Earth. From that living creatures came out. So do you ever wonder the elements within your body was once resident in one star? No, is it really make you wonder? No, it really makes me wonder. And this is the wonderment that really made me to get into space technology. Each one of you at that time when I was a student, maybe in studying in school, I used to read small stories of space, try to understand what is sun. I remember still one of the book I read is Captives of the Sun. It just mentioned about various planets, their type, the structure of those planets, etc. It was way back in 1970s, when I was a school student. But today, much later, when I became an engineer, I had an opportunity to work in space technology. Had a possibility to work in PSLV rocket, then became the project director of GSLV Mark III, and do some work here in space activities. So I think that's what brought me here to speak to you. So thank you once again for that opportunity. But today for youngsters, I want to tell you a very important story. I was director LPSC way back in 2015. At that time, Dr. Kiran Kumar, the chairman of ISRO, called and told me there is a young boy, Rohan Ganapathy. He is in Bangalore. He is interested in making electric thrusters. He just passed out of engineering college. He is trying to incubate a small company in Bangalore at Indian Institute of Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He has already got a small space in Institute of Science, and he has set up a small lab. And he asked me, why don't you go and visit him? So I went to the institute, and I met him, Rohan and Ganapathy, and he had at least 4 or 5 of his friends assembled there. And what he is trying to do, he's trying to make a thruster. He wants to make an electric thruster using water as a propellant. Using microwaves energy, he was trying to generate a microwave energy and then convert water to plasma and then eject through a nozzle and produce thrust. And he was successful. So I wrote the first MOU with a startup company in Indian Institute of Science. 2 crore rupees I have signed the MOU. This was the first ever MOU signed for a startup in Indian Space Research Organization. So that is one story, and today I'll speak about him little later. But also another story I want to tell you is about Pavan Kumar Chandana. He was also a young engineer. I was project director GSLV Mark III. So we were developing the GSLV Mark III. We were working on its system development. Assembly was going on. After some years, we were going to the launch pad at Sriharikota. We were building the rocket. And this Pavan Kumar Chandana was an integration engineer. He was very, very enthusiastic. He goes around everywhere, try to find out, discuss with people, No, I was really inspired. I was observing him as a young engineer. What he is doing he is very active engineer. He comes always to Sriharikota, works on rocket, something or the other, goes back. Uh, there was a spark in him. I could realize that spark. But later, after we had our first launch of GSLV Mark 3 that we call GSLV Mark 3 X mission. So after that launch, maybe 1 year later, this man came and said, I am resigning. I want to start an industry. I want to start a rocket design industry in Hyderabad. This boy is from Hyderabad. He said, I am going back to Hyderabad. I am going to incubate a company in Hyderabad. And today, some of you may be knowing about those companies called Skyroot, and they are developing the first ever rocket in private company in India. And the rocket is made of solid propellant system, boosters, and their rocket engine has been recently tested, some of the first of stages. And they are discussing with us how to make this rocket into a full-fledged rocket and then commercially exploit. So this is another startup company, a story of a startup company. I have been to Dubai last week. Last week there was a global conference of space technologists, space agencies called International Astronautical Congress. It was a 1-week session. All the space agency people come, NASA, ESA, Japan, JAXA, Indian Space Research Organization also participate. I happen to be one of the vice president of the IAF, so I had to go. So I was there. But the most interesting thing I want to tell you is that in addition to all the talks and presentations, there were a lot of exhibition arranged. And I want to tell you, young people, there were so many Indian youngsters in that exhibition. And all of them were doing some startup or the other. They had small booths. One of them was a company called Agnikul. And this is incubated in Indian Institute of Technology, Chennai. And they have produced their first liquid engine, additively manufactured liquid engine. It was on display there. There was yet another company called Dhruva Aerospace. They are trying to build satellite dispensers, solar panels. Yet another company is working on a software that can detect collision of satellites in the orbit and then how to handle debris and observe the debris that is coming hitting you and how to mitigate. And this software has created so much of interest even in NASA, and they are interested to buy that software. So I want to tell you the story that many of you may not be knowing, that all across the globe, Indian startups are really making big news, especially in the aerospace sector. So keeping this story apart, I want to tell you, go back to my, the excitement of space. See, probably today you know the type of activities that is happening. Last year it was a COVID year, 2020, and everywhere the industries were down and a lot of work was, people were suffering, activities are not happening, and industrial production actually went down. But have you ever watched the space sector, how it was performing? And I want to tell you, 2020 was one of the most fruitful year or productive year in space technology. There are exciting events happening all across the globe. There were 3 missions to Mars. One of the mission was Perseverance by NASA, another by a HOPE mission by United Arab Emirates, and the third one was a mission by Japan. So 3 Mars missions went. Then there was private human space flights. Probably you would have watched some of the TV. Virgin Galactic sent their first man to space. Jeff Bezos in his, he himself traveled and then showed that it is possible to cross the Kálmán line and come back safely. And private astronauts were flying. And they were the first ever women all-crew extravehicular activity from NASA International Space Station. The space habitat system by a private entrepreneur from America is already announced. The OSIRIS-REx mission, which collected some 60 grams of material from an asteroid, and it is on the way back, and they will reach the Earth back in 2023. So really, a lot of excitement is created all across the globe in space technology. And we also had our mission, Chandrayaan-2, but but we had our lander, but then it couldn't make the successful landing. But all these are happening. Why? And why this excitement all across the globe in the space sector? And I want to really go back and then tell you another story. It was in 2011, maybe, around June, July, I was invited to go to Kennedy Space Center, Florida, as a part of a NASA program. They were conducting a program called IPMC. It is an international project management program. And I happened to be the only Indian, had an opportunity to visit NASA at that time, Kennedy Space Center, and that was a time in which the STS-135, that's the last space shuttle mission. If you go search your Google, you will find out STS-135 is the last mission of space shuttle, and they were about to close down the space shuttle program. And that was the last mission. So they said that, why don't you people come, we will have a discussion with the NASA scientists, and we will also have an opportunity to see the last space shuttle mission. So I went there. It's a beautiful place, Florida. It is just like the Sriharikota launch station. So I stayed there. We had an opportunity to meet many veteran space shuttle scientists, and they were speaking about their historical part of their development and what is waiting to happen to United States in the space technology. And they were very, very sad because NASA decided to close down space shuttle program. I know you probably, all of you know, space shuttle is one of the beautiful, fantastic machine ever built by space engineers. And it was like an aircraft. It will go to orbit, taking about 6-7 people, do a lot of experiments, deploy satellites. It can bring back satellites. First time in the history they have brought a satellite back from orbit. It can repair satellites. And just because space shuttle is there, all these wonderful machines like Hubble Space Telescope, Kepler, Chandra were deployed. And it was the only human flying rocket that was available for United States at that point of time. And they were deciding to close down the program, and they were stopping it. So in the meeting, I asked some of those veteran NASA specialists, why you people are deciding to close down this program? What is happening to United States? Why you have no vision? Then they were telling, this is a political decision. We want to close down the program because the space shuttle program has become prohibitively costly. And it is not economical for America to continue this program. So they are deciding to close down. Very well. So we had a visit. I was going around the place. Now I met one old man who was working near the space shuttle. He was showing me a tile. The tile of the space shuttle is a very special material. It's a very lightweight material. One side can be very, very high temperature, 5,000 degree, and the other side you can hold with your hand. It will not, the temperature will not reach it. So it's such a wonderful material. And this man was, ever since last 25 years, he was always bonding this tile. After the shuttle comes back, he has to take out the tile, he has to clean it up, repair it, re-coat it, then rebond it. It was a very, it's just 2-3 months of work, and this old man was continuously doing for last 25 years. And he told me, I really don't know, shuttle is coming to an end, and I don't know anything else. I don't know any other job. And I have been doing this work only ever since I joined NASA, and I really don't know what will happen to me. So it was a time of despair in NASA, and they didn't know what to do in the next 10 years or so, and there is no program visible to them ever to take human beings to space. International Space Station is still there. People are staying up there in the International Space Station, and only human carrying vehicle at that point of time was the Russian craft. And for the next 10 years, America was dependent on Russia for bringing or taking the astronauts from American soil or from Russian soil to the International Space Station and keep it alive. So I am telling you this story just because of the strategic importance of decision making. United States was making that decision to shelve a program because they wanted to see an emergence of space program. They were working behind the scene to see Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos possible. If you are to make Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos possible, you have to close down some programs and allow other programs to come up. At that time, Elon Musk was just an industrialist. He was speaking about Falcon 9. Probably you have heard about a SpaceX company today, and they are the ones who are making the Tesla car, and they are talking about electric cars, and they are making the high-speed transportation system, solar power systems. A person who is a software developer who built the PayPal, he got interested in space technology, and he developed the first ever reusable rocket. SpaceX company, he made the Falcon 9, and the Falcon 9 was not just like that success. The first 2 missions failed, and he was about to close down this company. The third mission, if it fails, the company is closed. But fortune was on his side, and the third mission of Falcon 9 was successful. And hence, that company continued to remain floated, and NASA was helping them. And slowly, he was building the capability, and he demonstrated the first ever vertical landing of a rocket. And see, as a rocket scientist, it's really a very, very enjoyable thing to see an expendable rocket, which we call rockets expendable because after The first stage fires, it falls into the sea. The second stage fires, that also falls into the sea. And finally, only the spacecraft goes to the orbit. For a 600-ton rocket, only 4 tons goes to the orbit, and 596 tons falls into the sea as debris or fuel is lost. But if the rocket is a reusable one, then it becomes like an aircraft. See, none of your aircrafts are taking people from Trivandrum to Bangalore or Bangalore to Trivandrum and then thrown away, and next another aircraft is taken. Just imagine if that is like this, your cost of travel will be prohibitive, right? None of you can travel with 5,000 rupees or 4,000 rupees, take a ticket and travel if your aircraft cannot be used multiple times. But the moment the rocket can be used many times, the cost of access to space comes down drastically. And that is a revolution that SpaceX has created in the recent times. And he was successful. And this success is just like that, it didn't come. In America and other parts of the world, so many people were trying out how to build rockets which will last many years. It can be reused. The history is filled with such attempts. One of them is called Roton rocket. It had a rotating impeller. It went up, fell down in 1 or 2 missions. It crashed. And the company had no money to work on further, and it closed down the program. Another company called Chrysler Aerospace, and they worked on a reusable rocket, and it will go up to the orbit. Then it will come back and land on balloons. Another idea. So many ideas were there, and none of them were successful. And the only person that finally became successful was Elon Musk, a software developer who has no background in rocket technology. Just he had the passion. And the passion is enough to build that such revolutionizing technology. Then followed by Amazon's Jeff Bezos. He also developed the Blue Origin company, made the New Glenn rocket. Recently it had the launch with the very old people, youngsters, and then showed that it is possible for a reusable rocket to work. What the transformation means is a big thing. Today, the entire aerospace sector, especially the rocket area, is under disruption. Everybody is now talking that it is not possible to continue the current design of rockets and then compete with SpaceX, because he is offering a launch cost at 1/5 the price any other launcher in the world can offer. There is a big company called Arianespace in Europe. It is a collection of so many countries, about 13 countries, they have come together to build the rocket, Ariane. There were various series of rockets. That company, the single launch cost you something like 600 to 700 crores to put a satellite in orbit. But the same satellite, if you go to SpaceX, they are offering for hundreds of crores, maybe 100 or 200 crores. So the Ariane company is in deep trouble. So, and they don't have a solution. So this is a type of disruption that it can create. So now let the SpaceX remain there. So let us go back to the history of space technology. Earlier, after the Konstantin Tsiolkovsky wrote the rocket equation. Some of you know who wrote the rocket equation and made the first ever rocket, how rocket can fly? Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. Anybody know about him? Maybe. Then there is yet another person, Goddard, in US, who made the first ever liquid rocket engines. So after that time, there were two strong powers, America and Russia, and they were working for putting the man on moon, and there was a fierce competition. And who succeeded finally? Russia succeeded finally in putting the man in space first, but then America came about and they successfully placed the first man in moon. And Russia never went to moon with a human being ever after, because America has already achieved and they found no reason to do that. But after some time, the promises that were given at that time were not fulfilled. Probably youngsters like me at that time were really wondering, oh, one day we will be going to Mars, and the Martian people will be coming to Earth, and there were movies made on so many Martian people coming and invading Earth. So many interesting movies were made at that point of time. But probably you would have watched that the whole space activity came to a lull. After the initial euphoria of all the space sector, the manned mission, everything happened, it became slowed down, especially because the Russians were no longer interested. And people realized that space technology is just not for making such headlines, but it is for application. You can make use of rockets and spacecrafts for remote sensing. It can become a very important tool for communication. They produce the GPS and the global positioning system which you are enjoying on your mobile phones for tracking. and it changed the lives of the people and how applications can really transform the lives of the people. And this, once it was realized, many nations were moving away from human space flight to experiments and applications, which became the hallmark of space sector. And a lot of satellites were launched. So disaster warning, earth resource mapping, agriculture, disease prevention, then especially water resource mapping, so many applications came. And that is the story of Indian Space Research Organization. When we realized that space technology can be used for service to people, we created this Indian Space Research Organization. And when Sarabhai founded this whole program, the one important motto that he told is that we should be second to none in the application of space technology for the benefit of the people. And entire program of space technology in India was focused on this particular point, that whatever we do, finally, it should be beneficial to people. So we built on applications. Applications were based on remote sensing, where we create the regional remote sensing centers. We mapped showed that it is possible to map different crops, rice, paddy, and then we can make the acreage estimates. They can provide the information to government. We can also look at how the water resource can be mapped, and where you drill, you can find water. Earlier, if you go and drill water in some locations that go deeper about 50, 60 meters, you find no water. Today, using the water prospecting tool that we have using space technology, the success rate of drilling and getting water can be almost 80%. We found that we can scan the seashores near our region and then find out fish schools and then inform people, and then they can go there and catch fish. It really improves their livelihood, reduce the consumption of kerosene, and going around and finding fish. And that can be really brought down. You can predict cyclones and floods much earlier so that people can be evacuated. In my younger days, we used to see people moving, coming from Bengal and Orissa. After every cyclone, they come out and then come to southern part of the country as beggars, really. And thousands die at that point of time, used to die. Today, we don't hear about that many people dying. Maybe some people may die, few tens of people, because they couldn't be relocated. But today, the damage to property cannot be avoided, but death can be significantly reduced because of the early warning system. And we have so many applications that has come out in the space sector. So Indian space system has been built on this capability. Today, we have launch vehicles which can place almost 4 tons to orbit from Indian soil, and the rockets that are built within India itself. So it's a really strong capability. And India is not a very small player in space sector, and we are the only nation who could actually send a spacecraft to Mars and become successful in its very first attempt. When I used to go to international astronautical congresses and similar programs, in the higher level, people know India is doing very well. But in the common people there, they don't realize that India is actually having rockets, and India is having spacecraft, and we are doing this mission, and people just don't believe. And there are people who ask me, no, are you really making rocket really in India? No, is it given by some Americans or Russians to you, and you are only assembling them and sending them? Then when I tell them, no, we are actually building it ourselves, we know how to build a rocket, and we know how to launch it and successfully, they just don't believe. No, this is the type of thinking that they were having, but it is slowly changing. Recently, the Dubai International Astronautical Congress really showed some of the European people are coming and asking me, how is that Skyroot, that startup there, are they really going to be successful? They is asking me, can you tell your opinion? And I said, why you are doubting about, say, startup in India? You have any doubt about the startup in Europe? Absolutely, you don't have, no? Then why you doubt the startup in India? And they are really going to be successful. And it is our duty to make that Skyroot company to become successful. So this is a transformation that has happened in the last many years. So they were not believing us. Today they know the Indian youngsters are doing wonders. They are able to come out with ideas that are really transformative. Just thinking about a rocket and building it's not a small thing. Really, rockets are very complex machinery. And it requires a lot of effort. It's not possible by 1 or 2 people, and it requires resilience, basically. Suppose you make a rocket engine, it doesn't become successful. you need to make major changes. It requires cost implications, and there must be support system available to support them to come out of this design issues and then become finally successful. And this is the reason why recently Government of India has announced very important announcement called space reforms. Many of you may be knowing that this is a time for young people to come into space technology, into high technology areas, because the government is expecting you to do that. They are telling in ISRO as a national space agency cannot remain as an isolated agency. You need to open up and say private agencies, startups to come and then start working on rockets and space technology. And they're telling you support them. To me, it requires analogous to what happened in NASA in 2011. In 2011, when I went there, there was large amount of disruption. The NASA scientists were feeling so dead. They were feeling our organization is dead and we have no future. But the political system is able to see the future. I think we have to understand that. They were trying to bring up new players into the whole field. NASA alone, there is a limitation. NASA's budget has been going up for some time, but it came down drastically over the years. No nation can fund a national space agency the way it used to fund when there is a Cold War. But when the growth of a sector has to be significantly increased, it is important that you need to bring in new players into it. So this is the visionary leadership of United States at that point of time did. And just because of that, in the last year, SpaceX did 20 launches. And no other nation other than China could beat them. Because there is a SpaceX there, and they could beat China. Otherwise, China would have been the top launching country in the world, beating America. It would have been really a game changer. So I'm sure this is what is going to happen in India as well. The government wishes that Indian space sector be opened up and new players come in. And the new players are not the one or two people which I just mentioned. There are many more people. Through Aerospace. And they are doing development of satellite building blocks. Suppose you are interested to build a satellite, you meet Dhruva. They will give you the packages that you can build a small satellite. They have actually created a bus on which you can put your payload. And they will design the entire system, including solar panels, separation mechanisms, probably youngsters who are interested to build satellites. As part of this, the Dhruva is there to help you. And there is yet another company who is working on imaging. They are bringing the satellite images from Indian satellites as well as from foreign satellites. They are adding value to it. And they are not only doing this value addition, but it is on the fly. Suppose you are interested to get an image of a certain area for a specific business purpose, then you can get in no time. On your mobile itself, you can get that image within no time. Earlier, we used to get an image, you have to first send a request, it goes through approval cycles, then our government agencies will scan whether there is any classified information there, and then finally when it reaches, it will take months together. Today, the situation has changed and there are agencies who are capable of supplying satellite images at a fraction of a cost at high speed. And this is a change that has come. Now, let me tell you that in the coming years, there is a lot of things are going to happen. I just mentioned about the missions that the SpaceX did, the first ever Dragon capsule launch that went to the space station and docking. Some of you would have watched that Dragon launch. Many youngsters are very keen to see. The first ever privately designed human flying craft is called the Dragon. And it was launched by SpaceX, and it went to International Space Station and landed, docked there automatically without any human support. Then humans were transferred from the Dragon capsule, and they came back and landed very safely back on Earth. It is again historical events happening in space sector. Another important event that happened is the Perseverance launch to the Mars. Why I say Perseverance is one of the important launches? It is the first fully robotic mission to go to Mars and land. And after it landed, there is a rover which has a hand at almost 15 cameras are there. And it is drilling the sample from Mars and then analyzing it there and sending the data to Earth. And it also had a helicopter. A counter-rotating two wings were there made of carbon fiber. The whole helicopter weighs only 1.4 kilogram. And you know, Mars atmosphere is very thin. It is only 1% of the atmosphere of Earth. So in a very thin atmosphere, if a helicopter has to fly, you can understand it, helicopter requires air. Now, without air, you cannot lift up. So, when the atmosphere is so thin, the helicopter has to rotate at very high speeds. So, the counter-rotating helicopter wings were rotating at 14,000 RPM, very high speeds. And sitting on Earth, we could see the helicopter lifting and moving around in Mars and moving hundreds of meters and carrying out remote sensing of Mars. As a space scientist, I can really look at it with great wonder. The ability of the human beings to conceive such experiments and carry out in yet another planet. Why Mars? Because Mars is so important for us. Mars is such a planet which is very close to Earth. It has a period of rotation approximately 24 hours. That is just like Earth. Do you know that? But only problem with Mars is its atmosphere is very thin. If you go there, the atmosphere is full of carbon dioxide. You cannot breathe. How was Earth millions of years back? Our atmosphere also was full of carbon dioxide. There was no oxygen at some point of time in the evolution of Earth. And there was one bacteria called cyanobacteria that worked within the sea and then created all the oxygen that we are breathing today. So all the oxygen that we are breathing today are created out of these phytoplanktons and all those small creatures, not by the big trees alone. Most of the oxygen is generated in the sea. So this cyanobacteria worked for millions of years and converted the entire carbon dioxide back to oxygen. And the atmosphere changed substantially. And then came the possibility of life to come up here. So it is possible for human beings to convert the Mars atmosphere of carbon dioxide into an oxygen-rich atmosphere if you are able to plant that cyanobacteria there. And where is the cyanobacteria? The cyanobacteria residing in all the chlorophylls of the trees. The chlorophyll, which converts the sunlight to carbohydrates, is essentially the gene of the cyanobacteria. So there are books written on how to convert Mars to a habitable place. So tomorrow, human beings will travel to Mars. They will create settlements there. And there are books written, if given 100 years, I can convert Mars to a habitable planet. There are books written, scientifically written, saying that it is possible to convert the atmosphere of Mars to a habitable place. Possibly it may happen. And Elon Musk is building his next ship. He is telling, I will take human beings to Mars in hundreds. In one launch, there will be 100 people on board. And this shuttle will be going in such a way, it takes 6 months to travel. So what he will do is he will first launch the rocket to the Earth atmosphere. So propellant is over. So he'll launch the next one. It will refill the propellant. Then the rocket will take off from that point to Mars. And at Mars, when he reaches there, you need again propellant. Fuel is over. So how to come back from Mars to Earth? So for that, there is a technology called Sabatier reaction. That is, if you have water and carbon dioxide, those who know chemistry a little bit, water contains hydrogen and oxygen, and carbon dioxide contains carbon and oxygen. So just replace carbon and oxygen, you will get methane, CH4, and water, hydrogen oxide. So, and oxygen. So methane and oxygen, you can combine together to, again, as fuels. So using a Sabatier reaction, you can, using water and carbon dioxide and solar power, you can generate fuel, methane as the fuel and oxygen as oxidizer. You fill that into the rocket and then come back to Earth. So first you create a plant on Mars using carbon dioxide and water available, and there is already proof that water is there on Mars. So you can create fuel there and you can conduct shuttle trips between Mars and Earth. So the possibility of human travel to Mars and become a colony on Mars is a possibility, is not a possibility today. It is going to be a reality maybe in your lifetime. It may not be in my lifetime, but I'm very sure about the fact that for youngsters who are here, in your lifetime, you will actually watch people going to Mars and creating colony. Your uncles and, I want to go and visit my uncle on Mars and then come back, I will see you next week. No, this type of things will happen maybe not far from now. So it is not a science fiction story I'm talking about. Elon Musk is actually building the space shuttle that will take you to Mars. He has demonstrated. Last month or maybe month before last, he did his first ever vertical launch and came back and landed. So he's building that huge craft that will take human beings to Mars. He's not only making that to Mars, but also telling that you can travel within Earth very, very fast. Suppose you want to travel from Australia to New York, Sydney to New York. It takes maybe 13 hours, 14 hours of intercontinental flight travel. He says, using this rocket, I can travel from Australia to America in just 30 minutes. So you get into the rocket goes to 150 kilometers, it travels at supersonic speed, hypersonic speed, come back and vertically land in New York, and then you can get out that you have been getting out of an aircraft at the ticket cost of an airline ticket. That's all. So the time taken will be only 30 minutes. Do you think that it is impossible? I think he has given a technical proof that it is possible. So he says going to Mars and going across continent is just the same. It is a similar type of travel possibilities are existing. So when you hear about all these stories, now you think that these are all dreams. But please remember that things that happened last year really tell you that it is possible for all this to happen. And we have to be part of the whole movement. It cannot be left to United States alone. All these changes are happening in United States just because the policy of the government enabled all these young startup companies to come up and then develop rocket technology in a big way that NASA could never do. So it only says that we need to change our approach. We need our young people to come up and take up this activity in India. And it is possible for India to become an innovation hub of the future. I think this is what we should do. And the technical strength, the engineering strength within this community is really phenomenal. That's what I have told you, that when I went to Dubai, I could see only youngsters from India is putting up stalls to show that we are working on this area. But there are difficulties. I must tell you, there are definitely difficulties. One of the difficulties to sustain the funding which is required for a startup to survive. And we are talking to big players in India. There are huge companies in India. There are Reliance, L&T, Tata's. All of them have enough money. They are working in industrial sectors. They need to come forward and support these young people who have ideas. It is only through this movement that it is possible such ideas can be taken to shape, and slowly this capability within India can develop. And I am sure about the fact that the youngsters in the next 10 years will really change the ecosystem of space system in this country. And me, like people in ISRO, will remain as a support system for these youngsters to come up. And this is the important mission that the government has announced. And we are really committed to make it happen. That's why I want to talk to you young people, making use of this platform of the Inspired India Foundation. Is the time up now? Okay, wonderful. Okay. So using this platform, let me tell you that those who have this, listening to my talk, those who are really inspired to take up science and technology and also create some startups in this domain are welcome to do it. And many of them are doing it. And recently I took a survey of all the startups in this area, in space sector in India. There are at least 50 of them really seriously working on various technology capabilities in India. The Skyroot, Agnikul, the Bellatrix Aerospace, the Through Aerospace, they are some of the very prominent ones, but there are not so prominent many of them. And I come to know about that many industry houses in India are funding them. Only thing is that you need to have a good idea. And the idea must be created, and you need to have a passion about it, and then go and talk to people. And there will be people who are willing to support, maybe Kota Harinarayana, Dr. Upadhyaya, Tessie Thomas or me, and we are there to help you. So this is an offer, an unconditional offer to all youngsters who wish to make the real change in space sector. When I was a young boy and trying to look after engineering, we were all thinking what we will do next. We had no other option but to join ISRO. I must tell you, there was no possibility of doing starting a company or a startup at that point of time. Okay, when I was an engineering student, I was really passionate to join ISRO, and I tried my best to join. And fortunately, ISRO took us because at that time, in the 7th semester, before even passing out, there was an interview in ISRO. Many of us were called for that interview, and it was the time when PSLV building was going on. So they took us, so without losing even a single day after passing out, I joined ISRO. So that was only possibility at that point of time. But today, young people had a lot of opportunity. You can become a Pavan Kumar Chandana. You can join ISRO. You can understand how the organization works. Move out and then create your startup company. Or you don't have to even join ISRO. There are enough of hands which are in ISRO who are willing to come and move out of ISRO and then help you people. I have seen some people are taking voluntary retirement and coming and starting to work with the private entrepreneurs to build this ecosystem. There are retired hands from ISRO who are, or even DRDO laboratories who are willing to support these youngsters to ideate and work on your ideas and develop those systems to fruition. So there are plenty of possibilities. Let me also tell you the future. I'm really sure about the fact that the type of activities leading to the colonization of Mars is not the end of the humanity. See, I normally ask young people, do you know why dinosaurs became extinct? Any reason, One of you can tell? Maybe climate change. Some people say an asteroid came and hit Earth, and because of the hitting of the asteroid, there was a huge dust storm that came out. It covered the entire globe, and it blocked the sunlight for years together. So photosynthesis don't take place. Then all the vegetation died. Then all dinosaurs naturally died because, and many years it took for the dust to settle. By the time entire life forms, most of the life forms were dead, but there are still many other life forms survived, and then it went into another evolution. It can happen to us also. Just imagine an asteroid of, say, 1 kilometer diameter hit Earth. It will be equivalent to millions of atom bomb explosion. The entire Earth will be shattered, and it will create huge tsunamis. Suppose it hits a sea, or if it hits a land, then it will create huge amount of dust across the globe, and entire human beings will be wiped out. Because maybe some people who are lucky people who can survive in silos for hundreds of years with their food stock, sometimes they may survive, but most of the humanity will be dead. So I will tell you the reason why the dinosaurs got extinct. It is only because they were not having space technology, right? Suppose they had the knowledge of space technology, they will never die. And I want to tell you, human beings refuse to vanish in spite of such an event happening. Even because of climate change or even due to an asteroid hit, we should never get extinct. No, can we make that decision? Right? We are not willing to become extinct. So what we should do? So we should become a multi-planet species, right? We should not live not only on Earth, our genes should be there in other planets. So only the process of becoming a multi-planet species is to enable space travel. See, when Amerigo Vespucci or Magellan or the Christopher Columbus started their journey from the shores of Europe to look for the new land, America or India, they were not knowing where they were going. They were funded by some kings and queens of the Europe. The ship and the entire load of materials and stuff were provided them, and they went into the sea. They were not knowing where they are going, really, right? And so many ships got perished in the sea, and only Christopher Columbus or Magellan only could reach some places. And so many people whose names are not known to you are all died in the sea. Why human beings went out and in search of new land? Do you imagine why? What is the motive of these people to travel beyond their shores of comfort? It is the nature of the human being. It is the nature of the human beings to explore and find out far beyond what they are in the comfort zone. So we must tell youngsters that it is important for you to travel beyond the comfort zone. It is important for the humanity to explore beyond the Earth. It is important for us to become a multi-planet species, sometimes go to Mars, sometimes go to some other planets. And where are the some other planets other than Mars? Have you heard of exoplanets? Exoplanets are the planets which are around star systems outside our sun. The sun is the only planet, only star for us, and around this all our planetary system is there. But today, because of space technology and observational platforms we have like the Kepler and the Chandra, we know today every star got a planetary system. And in the universe, there are more planets than the stars. See, for around sun, we have this many planets. And think about the entire planetary system of all the stars. There are millions and billions of planets. Planets are like that, they don't have light of their own. So you cannot detect them because there is no radiation coming to Earth. Using telescopes, you cannot see them. So there are technologies today to observe them using transitional mechanisms. Suppose they pass in front of a star, there will be a small dip in the illumination of the star, and using that pulse of the dip in the illumination, you can detect how one object is moving in front. And from the periodicity of its motion, you can find out how many planets are there. And there are many other technologies to identify planets. Today, we have detected at least 5,000 exosolar planets. And in this 5,000, there are studies done, and it says that many planets in many other stars has got atmospheres like ours. It contains oxygen, it contains water, and temperatures are very comfortable, maybe near to maybe 50 or 60 degrees. Possibly human beings can live. At least there are hundreds of such planets. And we don't know whether these planets contain already living creatures. It's absolutely not known to us because they are so far away, and there is no technology for communication, so we'll never ever know what type of capabilities they have. But the only possibility is that tomorrow, if human beings ever wants to travel and occupy one of these exosolar planets, it must be possible for us to do that. But it will take many years for travel. Our propulsion systems in rockets will change. The conventional rocket propulsion may not be able to take you in few years. Sometimes if parents will travel in the craft, they will die, their children will continue the travel, and few generations later you may reach the exosolar planets. It may be okay. Otherwise, you will find out a technology in which human beings will be kept in suspended animation. You will be left to sleep, and your life form will be surviving in a special fluid, and with energy coming from sun or some stars, and you will reach the planet. Once you land autonomously in the planet, you will be coming out and growing again as human beings, and you will thrive in that planet as another species. Is it all possibilities? No, I believe it is a possibility. I think human beings have to explore this possibility. In the next tens or hundreds of years, such things are going to happen. And this is excitement of space. And I want to share this excitement today when I deliver this 5th Gurukulam Memorial Lecture. And I want to thank you once again for each one of you for such an opportunity given to me. It is a wonderful time to live. I think human beings are living in one of the best ever times in the history of human society. Don't think that the coronavirus was a bad thing. Coronavirus was one of the silliest things that ever happened to humanity. I think human beings have gone through much worse scenarios. Today, in India, 130 crore people, we have enough food to feed all the people. No? When we got independence, we were only 30 crore people. There was poverty everywhere. People were dying in Bengal and other places. Today, this country, not only this country, in many other places, the hunger has been reasonably eliminated. If at all some people die of hunger, it is only because the political system is not conducive to distribute the food there, not because food is scarce. The wars have vanished. I think earlier thousands of people used to die or killed in wars, but today still wars are being waged. Tens of people die, but large-scale wars are not there. Diseases have been controlled substantially all across the globe. The medical system has become so capable to handle diseases. Though coronavirus is there, and I can tell you, if this virus was there, say 20, 50 years back, I think many large amount of destruction would have happened to the society. Today, we are able to handle coronavirus in at least 1 year, 2 years' time. Because of the growth of science and technology, we were able to handle it. The mobility of human beings across the globe has been substantial. So you want to go to New York, you can go tomorrow. You can talk to people, know each other's face and the type of communication capability that we have. And tomorrow, human beings are going to do much more wonderful things. We are going to have a longevity which is beyond the capability of human beings. We are going to be a computationally intensive human beings, integrating the computer with us. Now, and then do things which nobody ever did before. I am not going, because that domain of talk is not related to this. So it's really an exciting time to live. And space technology is one of the elements of that excitement. So please be part of the space technology. And I ask a person who has worked in this domain for last 35 years plus, I want to tell you, my times are ending, but this is the time for young people like you to come up and then take up new assignments and responsibility to take this country and the world forward. I want to tell you, we have to become the leader in this domain one day. And only through the effort of youngsters, with the mentors like the senior people here, we can do really a great thing and make this country much more stronger and powerful. Thank you so much, and wish you all the best.
Thank you, Dr. Somnath, for a very inspiring speech.